Oh man, I gotta get this air circulating in here. What do we got? I'll put this thing on vents. Oh, it's always something. Here we go. I gotta get this air circulating and now I've got noise. Well, that's not good. Hey friends, it's Len here from 1A Auto. So we all know inside the passenger compartment of your vehicle, you're gonna have some sort of blower motor. But let's start this video with where is it and what does it do? Most blower motors are going to be located underneath the passenger side of the dash someplace, typically behind the glove box. Other times, you might happen to find it inside the engine compartment, pressed directly up against that firewall. And the purpose of the blower motor is actually to be able to circulate the air throughout your HVAC system. What does HVAC system even stand for? Heating, ventilation, and air conditioning system. All of that's going to be located directly inside the dash in the front of your vehicle. Keep in mind that blower motors come in all different shapes and sizes, and when you're looking for them, you're going to be looking at the bottom side, so that's just something to pay attention to. Also, if you do end up needing a blower motor, check us out at 1aauto.com. Now let's get into some of the problems that you might happen to find. Now to get into this, we're going to break it down into 3 different categories. We're going to talk about functionality, we're going to talk about strange noises coming from in the dash, and a strange smell coming from the vents. Let's get into the functionality aspect. So I go ahead and I turn it on. It should be on low right here. I can't hear anything. I start moving the dial. Let's go to medium maybe. Now I can hear the blower motor turn on. I'm going to turn it to medium high, someplace in between the medium and the high area, and now the blower motor cut back out. I put it all the way on high, and that baby's kicking on, and it's blowing like crazy. Now, if I was to start trying to diagnose this particular power issue, the first place I would go to would be the fuse. Essentially, you want to make your way to the fuse panel, and you want to make sure that the fuse for the blower motor or HVAC system is functioning properly. You can generally test either side or even pull it out and have a peek inside. Generally, you might see that it looks like it's broken. If that's the case, it's not going to get any power all the way to the rest of the circuit. Now, if you checked both sides of that fuse and you did have power coming from both sides, the next thing that I would want to do is go ahead and pull up a wiring diagram for the particular vehicle that I'm going to be working on. But generally, you're going to have power that goes from that fuse and it's going to make its way over to the switch. After the switch, you want to make sure that you have power at that point. Assuming you do, you're going to keep making your way down to that blower motor resistor. You want to make sure that you test it on all speeds. Essentially, it's going to have different resistance, and you need to make sure you have power on all speeds. Assuming it has power coming out of the resistor leading to the blower motor and it still doesn't work, well, now you need to get yourself a new blower motor. Now with all that said, we can get to the most common issue that you're going to have with the blower motor setup, and that typically has to do with the resistor itself. Like I said, in the resistor, it's supposed to have different areas that have different resistance. So when power is making its way over to that blower motor, it has to stop at the resistor first. The resistor says exactly how much power is going to make its way to that blower motor, and the blower motor is going to go ahead and do its job with that amount of power. The more power, the faster it's going to go. But if you found that the blower motor only functioned on certain speeds, well, that's essentially telling you that that resistor is no good in certain areas, in which case you'd have to replace it. And when I replace a resistor, I always make sure that I replace the blower motor at the same time. One other thing that I want to mention about this is you need to make sure that you check the pigtails on either side of the resistor and also on the blower motor itself. If there's an issue with the blower motor, it could potentially overheat the wiring, and in which case you're going to have an issue with that. It's not going to be able to transfer the power. If you found that you're having an issue with the blower motor, the resistor, or even the pigtail between the two, it's a good idea to replace all 3 at once. And if you need any parts, check us out at 1aauto.com. Get this thing off of here. Set that aside. Now we have a closer look at the motor aspect of the blower motor. Well, that's a little noisy right there, which is probably why we replaced it originally. But as you can tell, it does function. Now you can imagine what type of heat's going to be created inside of here. There is electrical current that's going through it that's getting brought through by that resistor. Now what would happen if for some reason something happened with the blower aspect of it or the fan aspect and it was getting caught on something, like maybe it couldn't turn? All right, now I'm going to hold this and let's see what it does. All right. It's trying to spin me here, but you can imagine if I was leaving current on this, like I had the switch on, the resistor's doing its job, it's still trying, but at some point it's going to create excessive heat inside of here. It's going to travel through. It could potentially cause damage here or even at the connection point. So if you find that for some reason the blower motor was stuck, you might also find that the wiring that leads to it might look like this. Oh, man. Now it's time to go ahead and talk about the noises. Turn off the blower motor. Thanks. All right, I can concentrate now. Now, there's a couple different reasons that might potentially cause a noise inside the blower motor system. Maybe somebody put in a blower motor and they didn't mount it up properly. It was sitting a little bit off kilter. When that happened, it could have potentially been hitting up against something inside. And once that happens, you can imagine how the balance of this cage is going to be. As this is spinning around and around, everything's going to try to expand a little bit. That's how it works. And essentially, when that happens, it's going to start hitting, and it's going to start causing a noise where it sounds like it's hitting up against something inside. Other than that, you might happen to hear like a squeak noise coming from it. You turn it on, you can hear. If that's the case, typically it's because inside of the blower motor, where all the windings are, you might happen to look inside there and see a whole bunch of debris or even rust. If moisture made its way inside this area and rusted anything up, especially where the bearings are or anything that happens to move, you're going to, of course, have that type of noise. So as far as noises are concerned, if you just go ahead and pull down that blower motor and you find that it's full of debris, typically you can just go ahead and clean that right out of there. But if you find that your blower motor looks like this one right here, where you can take the cage and shake it all around, well, then that tells you that the blower motor itself is no good. Not to mention, if you have an issue like this right here, where the cage is broken, typically that's a good reason to go ahead and replace the blower motor. But I should also mention that you can replace just the cage if you wanted to. It kind of just makes a little bit more sense to replace the entire blower motor, because more than likely, if the cage is broken, the motor itself could have been put under stress as well, in which case, why not just replace the entire thing? What is inside this thing anyway? Whew. Oh, every time I turn on the blower motor in this thing, I get a funky smell coming from in the vents. That leads us to our last symptom we're going to talk about. If you have funky smells coming from inside of your vent, typically it means you're having an issue with either your blower motor or even your cabin air filter. Something like this might help temporarily, but it's really not going to fix the issue. Now, if you're going to be looking for your cabin air filter, typically it's going to be located someplace near your blower motor. So it's going to be on the passenger side, and commonly on vehicles, it's either going to be directly underneath the dash where the blower motor is, or even behind your glove box. But in our case, ours is missing, which is probably why our blower motor was full of a whole bunch of mouse-like debris. That could be a contributor to the smell. Now, of course, any debris that does happen to make its way inside here, if it was to also accumulate moisture, it's going to start breaking down. And when things start breaking down, it could potentially create mold, or even just the compost of it breaking down can also create a scent of some sort. Now, we have an example of a vehicle that's supposed to have a cabin air filter in a completely different area. This one's actually underneath the cowl inside the engine compartment. Now, if I was to go ahead and open up this trap door over here, I should be able to pull this up. And then right inside this area, there should be an air filter or cabin air filter. Why is it called a cabin air filter? Essentially because it's supposed to filter out the air that's inside your passenger compartment or the cabin of the vehicle before it gets drawn into the blower motor and then circulated throughout the passenger compartment. Inside right here, if you were to look all the way down into that deep hole, that's where the blower motor is going to be located. It's going to be drawing air from all up inside this area, pulling it down and through a cabin air filter before it gets pulled into the vehicle. Just want to go ahead and take a look and make sure it doesn't look like this one right here. Any of this debris that's caught in there, like I said, can contribute to some sort of smell. All that debris could be making its way into the blower motor area. Once it's making its way inside there, without having anything to filter it out, it's going to go ahead and start pushing all this debris that would be collected in the filter throughout your vents. And then, of course, it's going to make its way to the passenger compartment and potentially in your face. Okay. Let's see how this thing works now. All right. Put on vents. All right, I hear it. That sounds good. Oh yeah, getting a little bit more air here. I don't have any funny noises. Let's crank it up. All right. Okay, so at this point, the blower motor's working perfectly. I'm ready to go ahead and get out of this place. So I'm just gonna go ahead and put on my seatbelt. I hope you liked the video. I hope you learned a little something. If there's something in this video that you think you want to share with somebody, go ahead and share it with them. It would mean everything to me. If you like the video or even love the video, go ahead and smash on that like button for me. It would mean the world. While you're at it, go ahead and subscribe. Ring the bell. That way there you, all of your friends, can be kept up with all of our latest content. Thanks for watching. That doesn't sound good. Oh, jeez! What? That's not good. That's not good at all. Oh, man. Whoops.